Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you all for coming on this beautiful summer morning now, I guess, officially. And a very special morning it is. We have a very special announcement that we'll be hearing from John Davidson about in just a few moments. We're also streaming this event through the generosity of Brian Spencer of Streaming Inc. Brian, thank you very much in the corner. And we also want to thank the media present today. I think we've got everybody. We've got Rogers, CJBK, CTV London, Blackburn News. Am I missing anybody? Okay, thank you very much for your time and effort today in covering this very special event. And we're pleased to have so many special guests in the room as well. Shireen Davidson, who's here with us this morning. We have some of our boys and their families here this morning, and you'll meet them more formally in a minute. We have many supporters, volunteers, donors, and researchers. And we'll be hearing from a very special researcher later on this morning that John will be introducing. But I also want to recognize some of our supporters in the room. And we have George Payne here. George has was involved with our golf tournament that went for 17 years. And George was one of the founding members and was there day in and day out helping this be a very successful event. George also happens to provide us with our photocopiers. That's the business he's in, and a variety of other things that as John refers to, our favorite price. So it isn't much. And George, his involvement with the golf tournament over 17 years, $750,000 went to research because of what George and his team did. So George, thanks very much. I'd also like to introduce our managing director, Wendy Sanderson-Cully. Wendy is here this morning. And our staff, Sue and Megan. Is that all we have? That's it, eh? That's our staff. We've got a lot of volunteers here too, which is great, and members of our board of directors. Colin Yowsey, our treasurer, is here. Colin, he's the guy that's going to say it's okay to give some money away or not. And we've got one of our newer board members. We've got Joe Barnes with us this morning. Joe, thanks for making it out this morning. And the chair of our Research Funding Advisory Committee, Dr. Lisa Hoffman. Where's Lisa? Right, Lisa, good to see you. That's a huge role for us because it's a critical role as to what we're going to be announcing and what we're doing today and what we've done for years. But to have people like Dr. Hoffman give so much of their time to this effort is really greatly appreciated. It is a special day. We have research news and we have funding updates to share. And although we've come a long, long way in the last 20 years, as you'll hear more about, we still have a long way to go. We still do not have the cure. Right now, ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to introduce to you the man who provided so much inspiration to so many people and who started all this more than 20 years ago. He's the man who's guided the organization to where it is today, the founder of Jesse's Journey, Mr. John Davidson.
Thank you very much, Rick, and thank you to each and every one of you for being here this morning. We have certainly come a long way from rolling coins at our kitchen table at that very first fundraiser that we attempted many, many years ago. These are genuinely exciting times at Jesse's Journey, very much like the way it was back when Jesse and I first took to the road to cross Ontario in 1995. Jesse had always said that when researchers work together, miracles do happen. And we have seen Duchenne researchers working together more than ever before. And this is good news for all the boys with Duchenne, and it gives their families real hope. In 2016, there is more research being done than ever before, and clinical trials, which were little more than a distant dream when Jesse's Journey began, they are now underway. We have reached the point where treatment, albeit with a small t, is now a reality for some of those boys with Duchenne. Life is getting better for those boys who show us each and every day exactly what real courage is all about. Since we began 21 years ago, when Jesse and I committed ourselves to making a difference, Jesse's Journey has provided researchers across Canada, the United States, and the United Kingdom with more than $8 million to help find a treatment and eventually a cure for Duchenne. Thank you. And it's very important that I acknowledge that that money has been raised over several years, and it is not our money. It belongs to the people of Canada who have entrusted us to be the stewards of that money, and it is incumbent upon us to see that that money works as hard as possible to bring us to the cure that we are all pursuing. I'd like to thank our very generous supporters and sponsors and donors, all our volunteers, and the many, many Duchenne boys and their families, including two special guests who Rick mentioned are here today and we're going to meet in just a moment. The families of Eric Morden and of Dylan King have been very, very loyal supporters for a long time. They have been proactive in raising money for research with help from their families, with their friends, their co-workers, students, and the events that they have created and supported. Here is how, in a nutshell, the process works at Jesse's Journey. Each year we call for proposals from researchers. The proposals, which come to us from around the world now, that wasn't the case in the early days, are then peer-reviewed internally and externally by the Research Funding Advisory Committee, which consists of researchers who we are not funding but who know the field, along with Duchenne parents. And those parents bring the urgency to the table. That committee then makes recommendations to the board in regard to the most promising research projects, and the board in turn acts on those recommendations in approving the funding. Our board has recently approved, as Rick mentioned, 3 new projects, and we are also continuing to fund 8 other multi-year projects. Jesse's Journey has now made grants, as I mentioned, of more than $8 million, and with new research projects being approved for 2016. I am pleased to announce today that Jesse's Journey's research funding total for this year is just over $1 million. These most recent projects are all Canadian projects. The new projects are in Laval, Quebec, Toronto, and Ottawa, and are now being funded by Jesse's Journey, along with research in other parts of Canada, the US, and the UK. Joining us this morning, and I'm very, very pleased that he is here. It has been a while since we have spoken to one another. He's been busy in the lab, and we've been busy trying to make sure that that team does not get much bigger than the number that Rick mentioned, and keep those costs under control. Our guest is Dr. Bernard Jasmin, who is the Vice Dean of Research at the University of Ottawa. Dr. Jasmin will share highlights of his work in utrophin, a protein which could compensate for the lack of dystrophin in Duchenne patients. Dystrophin, I should mention, is that thing that encases muscle and protects it from destruction and the ultimate collapse of muscle. And I'm sure Dr. Jasmin will correct me on any mistakes I've made in that regard. I've never pretended, thank you, I've never pretended to be a researcher, but we do our best to take the knowledge, which is incredibly complex sometimes, from researchers, filter it so those of us who kind of got to grade 9 science can understand exactly what's being said. So please welcome, from Ottawa, Dr. Bernard Jasmin.
Thank you, John. This is really a great pleasure and honor, in fact, to be here this morning with you all. In fact, when Wendy contacted me, was it 2-3 weeks ago, and we finally spoke, I immediately said, yes, I'm available. I looked at my schedule. In fact, I did have a few meetings, which I was happy to cancel. So instead of being stuck in Ottawa in some boring meetings, I'm here with you for a celebration and also enjoying the beautiful weather. So it's great to be here. Before I go on maybe with some thoughts and highlighting the importance for our lab and for our work, of Jesse's journey, his contribution over the years. I just want to show a couple of quick slides, perhaps to situate you in terms of what we've done over the last several years and where we are and why we're so excited now with some of the discoveries we've made in recent years. If you just go back the slide before, if I had to give a title to the work we've been doing in attempts to design novel therapeutic strategies for Duchenne muscular dystrophy, I guess the title would be From Basic Science Discoveries to Preclinical, and preclinical means studying cells in culture or animal models of the disease, all the way to clinical trials and clinical studies with human populations, using what we call repurposed drugs and molecules. And really, this is a strategy that my lab has decided to employ over the last several years. So instead of trying to design novel therapeutics or novel drugs, we decided to focus our attention on drugs that are out there already used in the clinic for treating other disorders, and try to see whether some of these compounds and drugs can be used to benefit patients of DMD. Clearly, the advantage of such an approach is that it would speed up the approval process with Health Canada and other agencies around the world, because those drugs are already used in human populations to treat other disorders. So if I could have the next slide. So when I say that our work goes back to basic science, I just want to show you this interesting slide. Many years ago, as John mentioned, a number of labs around the world had identified dystrophin as being the gene mutated in Duchenne muscular dystrophy. And the gene encodes for a protein which, as John mentioned, maintains the structural integrity of skeletal muscle. So without dystrophin, the muscle becomes very fragile and subject to degeneration. A little bit like what we have and what we see when we go to the gym and exert ourselves. We're sore, we feel pain. So essentially, that's what happens. The muscle cannot sustain that level of activity. Using, in this case, an experimental model system, it's a fish, in this case it's an electric ray, we were studying dystrophin simply to understand more about the properties and the characteristics of this protein. And the advantage of using this fish, an electric ray, is that not only does it have skeletal muscle, as shown in yellow, so for instance it's got dorsal and ventral muscle just like us. This fish, being an electric ray, has two gigantic electric organs on each side of its bodies that are circled in red. And these electric organs are in fact derived from skeletal muscle. So during embryology, during development of the fish, these cells originate from muscle cells. So using this experimental system, we were wondering whether there would be a protein, another protein very similar to dystrophin, which could mimic and the roles of dystrophin. And at that time, we published a paper saying that there was, in fact, an isoform. This is a protein, therefore, that's very similar. It's iso meaning equal, form, so similar to dystrophin. And this protein was named subsequently utrophin. At the time that we published our work, there was a lab at Harvard by Lou Kunkel and Kay Davies at Oxford, so we're competing with some of the best in the world to show that, in fact, there is this protein that's also very similar to dystrophin, which gave an interesting hope for us and many around the world to try to focus our attention on this protein and try to see whether we can upregulate and augment expression of that protein in DMD muscle to prevent or compensate for the lack of dystrophin that we see in the patients. So fast forward many years ago, next slide, after many years of studies and publications, et cetera, our work has led to the identification of specific targets inside of muscle cells that are controlling expression of utrophin. So the beauty of this is now we have pathways that we can pharmacologically intervene to try to upregulate utrophin levels and compensate once again for the lack of dystrophin. I show this slide simply because the targets are shown here. This is called PPAR, AMPK, and SIRT1. This is on the left side of the slide. But what's important is that there are activators of these pathways. And as you can see, some of these activators are in fact drugs that are currently prescribed in the clinic to treat other disorders. Just want to draw your attention to metformin. So metformin is a widely prescribed anti-diabetic drug. In fact, our work, which has been reproduced now by other labs around the world, has shown that if you use metformin to activate this particular target inside skeletal muscle called AMPK, you can upregulate the levels of utrophin, thereby providing functional benefits to a dystrophic muscle, in this case in an animal model. Similarly, if you look on the right side of the, I don't even know where north is actually, so I don't know why I said, maybe, I think you were a weather person, weren't you? So maybe that's why I said west or something, anyway. So on the right side of the slide, this is another pathway that we have identified called P38. Also P38 is inside muscle cells and activates utrophin expression. What's interesting, again, due to our studies, is that there are a number of compounds that are out there known to activate this particular pathway. I want to draw your attention to heparin, which is widely used in the clinic as an anticoagulant, and also Celebrex, which I myself sometimes need to use because my old joints are sore once in a while. So as you can see, our approach, which seemed a little far-fetched initially, has paid off because we went from a basic science discovery using electric fish all the way to now having compounds and drugs that are currently used in the clinic that can be repurposed, so therefore instead of using it for a particular disease, to now try to use it for neuromuscular diseases, and hence rapidly accelerating the development of viable therapies for Duchenne. So I will turn that off, and I just want to say a few extra words also. So Jesse's Journey and its entire staff have been working with us for many years now. I've been funded before, and I guess I'll be funded for another few years now, hopefully. And I just want to say that the entire staff, the entire organization has been fantastic to work with. Us as researchers, our time is divided between writing grants and supervising personnel, and we're running around all day long. But Jesse's Journey has been very accommodating. All along, our interactions have been very efficient, courteous, and professional. It's been a pleasure, really. Jesse's Journey has been a very strong support of our research program dealing with Duchenne muscular dystrophy, and I cannot thank them enough because this support allowed us to forge ahead with some of our projects, just like I mentioned. So this funding will allow us to continue with our project dealing with the upregulation of utrophin as a therapeutic strategy for Duchenne muscular dystrophy. I might humbly add that for this line of work, our lab is world-renowned, having made some important discoveries into identifying these compounds and drugs that I just mentioned that could soon be a benefit for Duchenne's patients. The support of Jesse's Journey has been essential and instrumental for us to maintain our leadership position worldwide with these studies. So currently, I mean, I don't do the work, I just talk and write a few things on a piece of paper, which funding organizations like. But currently in our lab, I have one PhD student, her name is Christine Pelado. I have a senior research technician, her name is Nadine Adam, and two more junior students, Paige Gilbank and Ali Al-Rawashdi. And all these folks are working tirelessly on these projects that I just mentioned. They're working from early morning to late at night, weekends, vacations, well, maybe. They're so committed that it's impressive how excited they are to be working on those projects. They're very much invested intellectually and emotionally, and I make sure that they stay that way so that we can advance with our project. This group of researchers, so those 4 individuals, is supported by a senior lab manager who's been with me now for 23 years, and also 2 highly skilled research associates which have been with me also for 15 years. So an important thing here is that the great support that I get from Jesse's Journey is also leveraged by other investments. So we have those 4 individuals working specifically on those projects, but those 4 individuals are also supported by other individuals with high levels of expertise. So the funding from Jesse's Journey goes a long way because I'm able to leverage these investments, making the work more efficient and advancing discoveries much faster. So no one in my lab works in isolation, and I think that's an important consideration, especially for the donors, knowing that their dollars is actually going way beyond the money that they raise because of the other funding avenues we have. So it's optimizing essentially the allocation of resources. So what is next for our lab? Well, you can imagine based on these things that we're very excited and we've come a long way. Now we've identified drugs and compounds that could be of benefit to Duchenne's patients. What we need to do urgently, in my opinion, is to set up clinical trials to test whether these ideas are valid and to test the safety and efficacy of these molecules in children's populations. Luckily for this, I am happy to report that I've been able to enlist the collaboration and expertise of Dr. Craig Campbell, who's here, is a pediatric neurologist here at the London Health Science Centre. I've known Craig for many years now, and this is the first opportunity that we have to collaborate. I must say that Craig was fantastic when I contacted him some months ago to say, do you want to collaborate on this grant from Jesse's Journey? Craig was immediately enthusiastic, provided his intellectual support, his writing skills, and were able to craft this proposal that I guess was highly ranked at Jesse's Journey. Craig and I have also been in touch since the grant was awarded, since we got the news, and we plan to be in close communications to try to move these projects forward. So this is another case where the money from Jesse's Journey is doing something else. It's fostering collaborations between a basic scientist and also a clinician to essentially carry out those critical studies for which now I think are the most urgent and pressing things to do along the line of work that I just presented. So without the support of Jesse's Journey, Craig and I would still see each other at meetings, but I don't think we would have the opportunity to collaborate. So I think Jesse's Journey, again, goes way beyond funding a single lab. Just want to mention a few things that in addition to my role as a professor running a research lab at the University of Ottawa, working on Nutrafin and a few other neuromuscular diseases, I'm also the Vice Dean of Research, as mentioned by John. And through this role, I have also accepted last year to chair the research committee of the Association of Faculties of Medicine across Canada. So since I assumed that role, leading the chair of the research committee, I've been in close contact with vice deans of research across the country, including here in London with Dr. Denise Filgowitz. What has emerged from these discussions is that the research community in Canada is generally suffering from years of underfunding, suffering from disjointed federal funding programs, and suffering from aging infrastructure. The constant request for universities and faculties to provide matching funds for various grants is also putting undue stress on scarce resources, which ultimately may lead to the best science not being funded. I am, however, as you can probably guess, an eternal optimist. And the good news, I think, is that there is now some movement with the new federal government to look at the state of affairs across Canada, and it has been in the newspapers. Hopefully, words will soon turn into action, so Ontario and Canada remain internationally recognized for our scientific achievements that goes also for all the health research being conducted in this province. In that sense, I urge each and every one of you to keep a close look at what our governments are doing, not only to support research, but in fact to increase our research activities so we remain a knowledge-based economy. To conclude, I wish to once again emphasize how critical the funding from Jesse's Journey has been for our lab, especially at a time of turmoil in the funding environment in Canada and Ontario. I greatly appreciate all the work that goes into raising the money and orchestrating the funding competition. For this, I thank all the staff at Jesse's Journey, and of course all the partners and the generous donors and the volunteers. Altogether, we ensure that the memory of Jesse is present with all of us, and that soon we will be able to offer novel therapeutics for Duchenne muscular dystrophy. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Jasmin, and keep up the great work. It's most encouraging. Now it's my pleasure to introduce two fine young men who are here on behalf of all the boys and are the reason why we're doing what we're doing today. It's my pleasure to introduce Eric Morden and Dylan King. I'll ask you boys just to stay seated for a moment and have you come up in a minute. We want to thank the boys and we want to thank their families for all they do through their schools, their friends, co-workers, to help us reach our funding goals. Families are a key component of what we do as far as raising funds. But I'd like to ask Eric to come up, and Dylan, if you could come up too. Eric's going to say a few words, but if you boys could come forward, that'd be great.
All right, so our family knows how important research is to everybody. As a member of this Jesse's Journey family for 13 years, we have seen great things come out of it. As we speak, I am doing a drug trial right now that I have been in for 5 years, and I'm doing that with Dr. Craig Campbell over here at London Science Centre. I really think it is helping me because I'm 16 years old now, and I'm still walking and up on my feet. So I think the trial drug is a big reason for this. Without Jesse's journey, the funds to research that trial probably wouldn't be here today. So if they had not been here, I might not be in that trial right now. Along with being in that trial, our family has been holding Eric's Amazing Race since I was 3 years old. And since the start of it, we have raised over $200,000 to date. And this year alone, we raised over $20,000 that will go to Jesse's Journey to fund research. So as you all realize, this is a team effort between Eric's Amazing Race, the events that Jesse's Journey holds, and the countless number of other events that members of this family have done, are getting treatment, and is providing researchers with the money they need to make trial drugs like this, and it makes me very proud to be a part of this group, so thank you.
We rely on volunteers. Our volunteers help us, our families help us, so many people in the community help us to generate the funds that we can then give to research, Dr. Jasmin, his team, and many other teams around the world, to finally see trials, to finally see treatments that are coming out of the clinic to genuinely help the boys for really the first time in this disease. Something other than steroids are coming available and coming online. Eric talked about the trial. We can see how important it is, and the results that these trials can produce. So I want to also thank everybody for their support this morning. A great turnout by the media for the coverage we provided. You've been great friends to Jesse's Journey. I want to thank everybody for coming and wish you all the very best. And we'll keep you posted on our progress. Thank you all very much.